Every Cessna and Piper pilot swears their plane will save your life until the system fails. Here is the honest truth. When the engine quits, the Cessna's gravity feeds fuel downhill, while the Piper's fuel pumps can and do fail. On landing, the Cessna's narrow landing gear turns pilots into unicyclists, with 63% losing control compared to 39% of Piper flyers. Comfort debates are cute, but survival is not. Which airframe actually stacks the deck in your favor? The answer is buried in the design and the data. Cessna pilots curse their ladders. Every fuel check means dragging out the step stool, stretching for the cap, and hoping you do not slip off the wing in front of the ramp crew. Meanwhile, Piper pilots stroll up, glance inside their tanks at eye level, and feel smug. But convenience does not keep you alive when the engine coughs at 3,000 feet. Here is where the fight gets real. The Cessna fuel system runs on gravity. Its tanks sit high in the wings above the engine. When you move the selector to both, fuel flows straight downhill. No pumps, no wires, no magic. If you have gas in the tanks, the engine runs. Power failure, alternator fries, whatever, the Cessna does not care. Gravity does not quit. Now look at the Piper. The Cherokee tanks are slung low in the wings, below the engine. That means fuel has to climb, and it is not doing that on its own. You get an engine-driven pump for normal flight and an electric boost pump for backup. 2 layers of insurance, but both are mechanical. Both can fail, and when they do, you are holding a glider, even if you have 20 gallons sloshing around in the wings. Diaphragm tears, relay corrosion, vapor lock. Ask any A and P with a few decades under their belt. They will tell you about the pump roulette. Sometimes the backup kicks in, sometimes it does not. Cue the mechanic. I have pulled more dead pumps out of Cherokees than I can count. The engine-driven ones get soft, especially if you run old fuel or skip a filter. The electric ones, if the relay sticks, you are done. The numbers back it up. In a 2-year NTSB sample, not a single Cessna 172 fatality came from fuel starvation or exhaustion. The gravity feed system just works. On the Piper side, fuel starvation is 5 times more common. 1 in 5 Cherokee 140 accidents involved engine failure, often when both pumps went silent. Sure, the Piper makes it easier to check your gas during pre-flight, but that is only if you actually do it. The Cessna ladder is a pain, and lazy pilots sometimes trust the world as most dishonest fuel gauges. But here is the truth. Gravity forgives human laziness. Pumps do not forgive mechanical failure. When it comes to survival, the Cessna wins this round by knockout. Gravity is undefeated. The scoreboard lights up, Cessna 1, Piper 0. Touching down in a Cessna 172, the challenge begins before the wheels even meet the runway. The landing gear, set just 10 feet 10 inches apart, gives the plane a stance not much wider than a city hatchback. The high wing, perched overhead, pushes the center of gravity up where it has no business being. Crosswinds do not just nudge, they threaten to tip the whole show. Pilots call it the bar stool effect. One gust, and suddenly you are balancing on a narrow base, fighting to keep the wings level as the aircraft wobbles and leans. The margin for error shrinks. Rudder work becomes a full-body sport. Miss a beat, and the Cessna is quick to remind you who is boss. Ground loops and runway excursions are not rare events. The numbers are blunt. 63% of Cessna 172 runway accidents come down to pilot miscontrol. That is not a badge of honor. It is a warning label. The Piper Cherokee enters with a different attitude. The gear stretches out to 12 feet 5 inches, a full 1.5 feet wider than the Cessna. The low wing tucks the center of gravity down, close to the pavement where it belongs. The stance is broad, planted, almost defiant. When the wind picks up, the Piper does not flinch. Crosswinds that would have a Cessna dancing on tiptoes barely register. The wheels grip the runway and the plane tracks straight. There is more to it than just geometry. As the Piper flares for landing, the low wing compresses a pocket of air beneath it, a ground effect cushion that softens the touchdown. The sensation is unmistakable. The plane floats, then settles, forgiving a late flare or a heavy hand. It is not just easier, it is safer. Landing in a Piper feels less like a test and more like a welcome home. Cessna loyalists will argue that their planes build better pilots. They will say the narrow track and high wing force you to master the fundamentals, to stay sharp, to respect the wind. Maybe there is truth in that. But insurance adjusters are not sentimental. The numbers do not care about tradition. Runway loss of control, RLOC, as the FAA calls it, hits Cessnas harder, both in percentages and in raw counts. For every 100 runway accidents, Cessnas rack up 63 due to miscontrol, Pipers 39. That is not a rounding error, that is a gulf. The difference shows up in premiums, in repair bills, and in the stories pilots tell after a rough landing. On the scoreboard, nostalgia does not count. Stability does, forgiveness does. For anyone learning to land, or anyone who wants to walk away from a botched crosswind, the Piper Cherokee offers a margin of safety the Cessna cannot match. The match is tied, Cessna won, Piper won. The contest moves forward, but on the ground, the Piper has made its point. Piper fans, you love the way your Cherokee hugs the runway. But let us talk about what is holding that wing on. Down low, tucked near the belly, sits the main spar, the backbone of the entire airframe. For decades, nobody questioned it. Then, in 2018, a Piper Arrow lost its wing in flight. The Federal Aviation Administration did not shrug. They issued Airworthiness Directive 2020-26-16, and suddenly every PA-28 owner had a new nightmare: bolt holes in the spar, slowly stretching, corroding, and turning into a death sentence. The culprit is moisture. That low wing design means water seeps down and pools right where the spar meets the fuselage. Over years, you get invisible corrosion, pitting you cannot see until it is too late. Every hard landing, every bounce, every G-load adds a hairline crack. The Airworthiness Directive spells it out: mandatory eddy current. Inspections, every 100 hours or at the annual inspection, whichever comes first. If those bolt holes are even a fraction too wide, you are grounded. Miss the inspection or ignore the warning signs and you risk the ultimate failure. The spar can let go without warning. In the real world, that means a perfectly good-looking Cherokee can fold a wing in cruise, no stall, no warning, just sudden silence and a vertical ride. This is not a rare defect. It is baked into the design. The Airworthiness Directive covers thousands of aircraft built from the mid-1960s through the late 1970s. Piper pilots can argue all day about handling, but physics does not care. Metal fatigue and water do not respect brand loyalty. Next time you walk up to that shiny Cherokee, think about the spar you cannot see. Now let's talk about the Cessna's dirty little secret, the seat rails. Forget the wing for a second. This is a threat hiding right under your butt. The Cessna 172's sliding seat runs on metal rails with tiny rollers. Over time, those rails wear down, corrode, or just get plain sloppy. Enter FAA Airworthiness. Directive number 95-22-01. If the rails get too worn or the stop pins shear off, the seat can slide all the way back, sometimes 4 inches, sometimes 6 inches, at the worst possible moment. Picture this. You're climbing out, pulling hard on the yoke, and suddenly the seat lets go. You lurch backward, arms outstretched, feet off the pedals. The nose pitches up, the airplane stalls, and you are fighting for control with your fingertips. This is not just theory. The NTSB report, SEA 96 FA-17-4, documents a pilot who slid back, lost reach, and the airplane nosed over into the ground. He survived, but the airplane was a write-off. Recurring inspections are supposed to catch this. Visual checks for play, stop pin integrity, even ultrasonic testing for cracks. But these planes are old, and not every owner keeps up. The seat slide is a silent assassin. You do not know it is coming until it is too late. Piper pilots might lose a wing, but Cessna pilots can lose the cockpit in a heartbeat. 50-year-old aluminum does not care about your tribe. It is coming for everyone. The scoreboard does not budge. Both airframes have a kill switch baked in. This round is a draw. Picture the aftermath. The cockpit fills with smoke, flames licking at the firewall, adrenaline pounding in your ears. You reach for the exit. In a Piper Cherokee, that means one door, always on the right, always just out of reach for the pilot in the left seat. If the plane lands upright, you are still crawling over your passenger, tangled in headset cords, knees jammed against the yoke. If the Cherokee flips, soft field, ditch, or just bad luck, that single door is now pinned against the dirt. The right hinge digs into the ground. The frame buckles. The handle will not budge. That is not a hypothetical. It is basic geometry. The low wing that kept you stable on landing now blocks your only escape route. The stopwatch starts running. Piper pilots know the drill. Unbuckle, scramble over the center console, try to drag your passenger with you, realize the door is jammed, then go for the window. Kicking out plexiglass with smoke in your lungs and flames at your feet is not a skill you practice in flight school. In controlled egress drills, it takes 22 to 35 seconds to get out of a rolled Piper if you are lucky. That is a lifetime when the cabin is filling with toxic fumes. NTSB reports do not need to spell it out. Every extra second is a coin flip between walking away and getting cooked alive. Now flip the script. The Cessna 172 gives you a door on each side. The pilot kicks open the left, the passenger the right. No climbing, no wrestling, no broken windows. Time to exit, 5 seconds, sometimes less. There is a reason Cessna's fatal accident rate sits at 0.56 per 100,000 hours, the best in general aviation. Survivors talk about unbuckling, popping the latch, and falling straight onto the grass. Even if the Cessna ends up on its back, the high wing keeps the doors clear of the ground more often than not. And if the roof crushes, the side windows usually blow out, giving you another way out. Mechanics shake their heads at the old Piper design. "You want to know what scares me?" says one A and P mechanic with 40 years under his belt. "It is not the wing spar, it is the single door. I have seen too many guys waste precious time trying to get out." The numbers do not lie. 2 chances versus 1 trap. In a fire, seconds matter. Cessna takes this round by knockout. The scoreboard updates. Cessna pulls ahead, and the Piper tribe cannot argue physics. Survival is not about comfort. It is about getting out before the clock runs out. Glide distance is not just a number in the manual, it is the difference between picking a field and picking a tree. The moment the engine quits, the wing design decides your fate. Cessna's high aspect ratio wing stretches long and narrow, built to milk every last foot out of thin air. The planform tapers, the lift holds on, and the glide just keeps going. At best glide speed, a Cessna 172 can cover over a nautical mile for every 1,000 feet you descend. That is not a brag. That is more time, more options, more breathing room when the silence hits. You get a shot at the road, the fairway, maybe even the runway you just left behind. Cessna buys you seconds. Now look at the Piper Cherokee. The so-called Hershey bar wing is a rectangle, short, fat, and simple. It is easy to build and cheap to repair, but when the prop stops, it is all drag and gravity. The aspect ratio sits lower, about 6.8 to 1, compared to the Cessna's 7.5. That means more induced drag, less lift, and a steeper descent. The pilot's operating handbook numbers do not lie. The Cherokee gives you less than a mile per 1,000 feet. The ground comes up faster, the choices shrink, and that cornfield you spotted out the window is suddenly out of reach. Piper loses horizontal space. This is not theory. Forced landings happen, birds, fuel, bad luck. Pilots who have been there will tell you, the Cessna floats, the Piper drops. The difference is not subtle. In a 3,000-foot engine out, the Cessna pilot can stretch for 3 miles. The Piper pilot is lucky to make 2.5. That half mile is the ditch, the fence, the difference between rolling to a stop and rolling the dice. Some Piper fans will argue the rectangular wing is more stable in turbulence, less twitchy in the flare, and maybe so. But stability does not save you when you are out of altitude and out of time. The Cessna wing is a survival tool, plain and simple. It buys you seconds, it buys you options, and sometimes that is all you need. So when it comes to the glide, the scoreboard moves. Cessna takes the round. The Cherokee may handle like a sports car on approach, but when the engine quits, the Skyhawk wing gives you a fighting chance. That is not marketing, that is physics. The tally is clear, Cessna pulls ahead, and the numbers settle the argument. Every year, hundreds of new pilots pick their tribe, Cessna or Piper, thinking comfort or style will keep them safe. But NTSB records do not care about loyalty. They record who got out alive. In aviation, survival is engineered, not wished for. The next time you step onto that ramp, remember, physics never takes sides. What would you trust with your last 5 seconds? Drop your answer in the comments below.